Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Net Impact Boston Career Profile Series. This week, we spoke to Sara Ross, a two-time entrepreneur who started both Sungage Financial and Undauntedk12. We hope you enjoy.
So my name is Sara Ross. I'm currently the co-founder of a national nonprofit called Undauntedk12 that focuses on achieving and accelerating an equitable decarbonization of our schools and preparing our young people to thrive in a rapidly changing climate. I have a background in public policy and got sucked into the clean energy space back in 2010 when my family was doing a deep energy retrofit of a 100-year-old farmhouse out here in Amherst. I was a stay-at-home mom, and my job was to be the point person for the family to manage this big project, and got to learn all about all the building technologies that are going to make our buildings healthier, more efficient places to live and thrive. So that's about me.
And so this that sort of jump, was that company, was that Sungage Financial?
Yeah, so here I was, a mom trying to make the dollars work to build this, retrofit this home, and I knew nothing about any of this stuff when we started the project. Had a baby on my hip when we were inspecting this old farmhouse for the first time, and was lucky enough to have partners out here in Western Mass that know a lot about how to make buildings, even old buildings, transform them into climate solutions. Like, oh, we're going to do LED lights, and we're going to do a lot of insulation, and we're going to do heat pumps, and they'll put solar on the roof. So, oh, that sounds cool. I don't know anything about that, but we trust you. That sounds cool. Talked to a solar installer. Someone said, oh yeah, you got the perfect roof. It's south facing, it's going to be awesome. We can run your whole house off of the sunlight that hits your roof. And I said, great. How much is it going to cost? And he said, $81,000. We said, okay, well, certainly is when we get the bank will know how to do this, right? Like, banks give people money to, that's how else are we going to renovate this home? And of course, the bank had no clue about solar and put that money to the side and said, no, we'll finance the new, fancy countertops and, the toilets and the lights and the walls and the floors and staircase. But that solar thing, that's kind of like a pool. Some people like it, some people don't. So we won't ascribe any value to it. You're on your own there. And so we really had this huge hole in our construction budget. And so that was what started the process of saying, oh, wow, we have not developed the financial tools to make solar affordable to the masses. And solar is good for the masses, and we need the masses to adopt solar, right? Sunlight hits all of our rooftops, and we can power our homes. And now, as I have an electric vehicle, our cars, right? And our induction stovetops and our electric dryers, right? We can power all of that with the sunlight that hits our roofs, but we need to make it easy and affordable for households, all households, right? Especially the ones most burdened by energy costs. We need to make that accessible. And back in 2010, when I was doing this, it wasn't. So I started, having never worked in a private sector company before, not being a solar person and not being a finance person, I started a solar finance company and, grew that up to be, one of the leaders in the space that kind of actually piloted this solar loan product that didn't exist in the marketplace. So that company has been operating since 2012, is operating in 48 states, and has done over $1 billion in solar loans, making solar affordable to households across the country.
Yeah, that must have been quite daunting. I mean, terrifying is the word that springs to mind.
Daunting. I love when people use that word now, given our current nonprofit, Undauntedk12. Oh my God, it was petrifying. I mean, really petrifying. I actually, when I had no intention of being a CEO, none whatsoever. Never mind working in a private sector company, right? I was a stay-at-home mom cutting grapes and managing nap time, and we were going through this process. And my husband was like, this is crazy that the world works this way. We have to do something about this. You should start a company. And I was like, no way. Me? That's crazy. And I was like, I'm not a finance person. And he was like, oh, Sarah, finance is just jargon and arithmetic. You'll figure it out. And you've sat in the seat of being the consumer. You've been at the kitchen table, you understand, the transaction in an intimate way that the guys on Wall Street actually don't. So you actually have a lot of the most important knowledge kind of at the nucleus of the decision making that we need to affect. So like you have what you need to do this. Okay, I guess I'll just sit in the seat for a little bit and we'll find a real CEO to grow this thing, and that's fine. And then, but yeah, it was totally petrifying. I was learning. I mean, startups are a wild ride, I think, for anyone. And yeah, I had a huge amount of, the good old fashioned imposter syndrome. Like, what am I doing running this, thinking that I'm going to transform this industry, that I'm going to bring a new financial, product to the market. And I think part of my inexperience was exactly what allowed me to take this bold, jump into the space, and, having supports that start at home and just continue to emanate outwards. So I think, the other thing that made it not so daunting was getting introduced to the, at that time, brand new Connecticut Green Bank. And the president there, Brian Garcia, who is an amazing and passionate clean energy leader, who himself had taken a leap, kind of starting the nation's first green bank. And he needed, to kind of prove out that the green banks needed to exist in the world and that Connecticut had done a good thing. And so they were our first checkbook after my daughter's college fund, which we used to do our first few solar loans, to be able to pilot this concept. So, he essentially gave us the checkbook for the state of Connecticut and said, go bring solar to more households in Connecticut, and we'll be your bank to do that, because we know the banks don't get it yet, but we're going to help you prove that this is good for homeowners. This is good for the small businesses, these installers that are going to install this equipment. And this is good for the banks that should be in the space, that should be, financing the clean energy transition, because it is good business and lots of people are going to want this product. So, so the support, kind of started at home and grew and grew and grew, and kind of, outer rings. I would say all the solar installers that I talked to were also a form of support, because they understood, right? They were like, picture yourself as a solar installer trying to grow a business. You're kind of like a car salesman that's trying to sell a car for cash. Right? Like, think it, because these systems are expensive. They're $20,000, $30,000.
Yeah.
Think how many cars you would sell if you were a car salesman and the only tool you had was for people to pay.
Check. Yeah.
You wouldn't get many takers, right?
No,
so these
absolutely.
guys were, doing heroic work, and they were, like, oh my God, yes, could you, Sarah, we don't understand finance, but man, could you do that? Could you help, have more customers be able to have, demand for our services and be able to take that up? Like, that would help us grow our businesses in amazing ways. They were another kind of ring of support that helped coax me into doing this.
So you mentioned the sort of reticence of the banks at the time. Have you found that like perceptions around these products have changed since you started doing this? Is it a different world now, or do you still come up against the same frustrations?
Totally. So, the kind of the stepping stones were daughter's college fund, Connecticut Green Bank, and then the next stepping stone was Digital Federal Credit Union. Right down on, in Worcester, with a national charter to lend. They were the next stepping stone. They were our next pot of money that we used to bring solar loans to the masses. And then the next stepping stone was a community bank in upstate New York, NBT, N as in Nancy, B as in Bob, T as in Tom, NBT Bank. So yes, the banks have now gotten much more on board, and there's huge demand, for these assets, because they perform really well. Turns out people pay their solar loans back, even when the going gets tough, because they need electricity. And when they have solar on their roof, that electricity is cheaper than, the electricity they're going to get from the grid. So, we had a great example of, a sad and unfortunate example of a homeowner who declared bankruptcy. Went through a hard time, had a medical issue, declared bankruptcy. And, as he's standing there in court with all of his debtors and the judge, he's saying, oh, I want to, I need to renegotiate my student loans and my more, all these other debts that he has. He's like, but I want to keep staying my solar loan. I want to stay current on that one, because if I don't, they're just going to shut my solar energy system off, and I'm going to have to pay more to my utility. And I need cold milk in the fridge for the kids, and I want to watch the football game at night. So I'm going to stay current on that one. So these loans perform incredibly well. And so yes, banks do want these, and they start to figure it out. They don't, only the most kind of, they need partners to do it. They need partners like Sungage to do it, because they're not kind of at the kitchen table where these solar energy systems are being sold, but they fundamentally want these assets.
Oh, it's wonderful to hear that there is so much demand, and I imagine that demand was always there. It's just, you make it accessible to people and they can start to realize it, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
And so sort of considering your experience with Sungage, I mean, how have you been able to kind of take that experience and then sort of turn it into your current venture? So the Undauntedk12. I mean, has that been a big step, or were you able to at least kind of leverage some of your experience?
Oh, it's so funny that we're talking today, because 2 weeks ago, or even a week ago, or maybe even a day ago, my answer would be different than it is today. So it's very funny. So yeah, so after I handed off the reins at Sungage, I was introduced to my partner, Jonathan Klein, who's been a leader in the education space for a few decades. Started his career as a 5th grade teacher in Compton with Teach for America, and has always worked to support educational equity. That's been his life's passion. And a few years ago, his teenager asked him to chaperone her and some of her friends at the big climate strike that happened in San Francisco and across the world in 2019. And that day, marching with thousands of young people, he got clear that, wait a second, this climate change thing is actually undermining, my life's work, educational equity, and is the thing that my kids are really going to hold me accountable to. And like, the other adults in the room that are in, positions of formal decision-making authority right now. So he made a decision that day to transition from leading a nonprofit that he had been running and had started himself for a decade, and to figure out, to start talking with superintendents and other people in his network in the education space around, how climate change was affecting his job. And he was getting kind of, that's a good question. Ooh, it's not, well, how should it be? And so he set out to activate and support schools in addressing climate change, for their own sake, for the sake of their students, for the sake of their communities. And he needed a partner that knew something about climate change. So we got introduced, and I was immediately attracted to this work because it had that same element that I love so much about Sungage, which was being at the kitchen table, bringing clean energy and the opportunities it brings all of us into people's daily lives, because just like solar can help a household budget, having schools that are climate ready and resilient and modeling climate solutions, that also brings it to the kitchen table, right? That's kids coming home talking about to their parents about how, we have electric school buses now that we ride to school, or there's solar on the roof, or, whatever it is. We have a awesome new, rain garden to help manage flooding, right? That also brings it and engages hearts and minds in a very fundamental way. And so I was immediately attracted to that. And so he and I have been, and it allowed me to kind of this work as a nonprofit where we're focused on advancing state policy to support this work. So that decarbonized, climate-ready, healthy schools are not the product of a few heroes, but are actually, what the system produces. As a matter of course, like, oh, right, of course. When we build a new school, it has heat pumps, not a gas boiler. It has solar on the roof. It has, electric school buses. Like, of course, that's just the way we do things. Right. So we're trying to evolve state policy to make that the reality. And so it allowed me to like get back to my public policy roots. And it had this hearts and minds element. And, as of now, as of today, as of you and I talking, the other thing it's pulling on from my past experience at Sungage is making the federal supports for this clean energy transition, namely all the new policy from the Inflation Reduction Act, Biden's big clean energy package, making those incentives work for schools. Mm-hmm. And so I'm back to some of the same financial challenges that Sungage solves. Mm-hmm. Namely, how do we make it easy for homeowners, or in this case, schools, to leverage the clean energy tax credits mm-hmm. that are aspiring to make clean energy the most economical mm-hmm. and affordable solutions for our schools. So I'm back to the same puzzles that I was solving when it was homeowners and solar. Now it's schools and heat pumps. And mm-hmm. it's, fundamentally the same issue. We have a customer and a decision maker that we need to make just the clean energy solution the most enticing, the mm-hmm. most easy, the most obvious, the most commonsensical, so that the school decision makers, all the complex decision making that is involved there is just, it can embrace this and move forward without a blink of the eye. And that's really not where we are right now. So there's mm-hmm. work.
Well, that was my next question, actually, was, I suppose, sort of how have you found the kind of take up about this? I mean, have you met with a sort of positive reception from policymakers, or?
So it's interesting. We have two sets of policymakers that we talk to. We have the climate leaders, if you will, the people in, energy, state energy offices. In Massachusetts, we have a new climate chief, the first in the nation, Melissa Hoffer, that was just named by our new Governor Healy. So there's a set of climate policymakers that we talk to. And for them, schools actually solve a problem. It's always good to solve someone's problem, right? So climate leaders, right, they're running around overturning every stone they can, looking for ways to reduce emissions, right, do climate mitigation, and enhance resilience, help us all adapt to contend with climate change. How can we do this? Oh, we need more electric vehicles. We need more solar. We need, to decarbonize our buildings. They're turning over every rock and stone to figure out how to do this. So when I talk about schools, schools, big public infrastructure, millions of square feet of buildings that are within the span of public control, school buses, the largest public transportation fleet with 480,000 diesel school buses, lots of rooftops, places where we can install clean energy solutions and have energy storage. They go, great, let's do it. How do we do it? Awesome. You're going to help us solve a problem, right? Which is how do we decarbonize? How do we get clean energy solutions out there? How do we make sure we have a workforce of the future mm-hmm. to drive this clean energy revolution? Great. All these kids in all these schools will be learning about this stuff, and we make our schools into these climate solutions. Wonderful. Sarah, how do we do it? Undaunted. How do we do it? Partners of Undaunted. How do we do it? Help us. We want to do this for schools. Schools also address an equity issue for them, right? How do we make this transition equitable? Great. Right? If we do this in the schools serving the most vulnerable populations, we're also multi-solving and addressing equity issues that we have, long-standing structural, issues in our society we can help solve. Wonderful. Great. Mm-hmm. So the climate leaders are attracted to schools, excited to tell the stories of schools becoming climate solutions, and want to know how, we can all work together to get that done. Now we flip over to the state kind of education policy leaders, and they're tired, right? They've just come out of COVID mm-hmm. and they're exhausted, right? Their teachers, right, are asking for higher pay because inflation has made their life, has driven up the cost of living. So budgets are tight and teachers are demanding higher salaries. Schools are caught in culture wars over curriculum and mm-hmm. justice issues, right? So they're in the crosshairs and already had a to-do list with 392 items on it. And we come to them and we say, and climate change.
Yeah.
And they go, so unfortunately, the reception among among education folks has been some mix with, some really, wonderful exceptions, but by and large, it's been climate change. That's not really our thing. Now, but we do want air conditioning because we had to cancel school, 4 days, last May, and the first day of school we actually had to cancel in September because it was too hot and our buildings don't have cooling. So I want that, Sarah, which of course heat pumps can solve, so climate solutions can address it. And I want to promote educational equity. Oh, okay, well, great, because guess what? Black and brown kids suffer disproportionately from extreme heat in schools. So actually, when we do this work of making schools serving the most vulnerable populations climate solutions and give them heat pumps, that is, we give them cooling, then we're actually helping to solve educational equity. And we prepare Black and brown kids for climate solutions in schools, we're actually setting them up to get those good green jobs so we can actually help you address economic justice issues and prepare your kids to thrive. And Sarah, as an education leader, I want to give my teachers inspiring places to teach. And teachers are demanding healthier workplaces coming out of COVID. Well, great. When we improve your buildings and improve HVAC systems with better ventilation, we can help you do that, right? So it's a matter of, and Sarah, the other thing I want is my budget is really tight and I want to operate most efficiently so I can give my teachers, that higher salary they're looking for. Well, so great. If we install solar, we can help you save money on your energy costs, get you off the fossil fuel roller coaster, and you can pay your teachers more money. Like that school in Arkansas that went from being almost the bottom of the barrel in terms of teacher pay to the second highest in the state and is now attracting the best teachers and retaining all the teachers. So it's a matter for us of connecting the dots between what education leaders care about and the to-do, the top 5 items on their to-do list, and how climate can actually help them, how we can multi-solve with climate, how it's not going to be the 393rd thing on their list, but can actually help them do the top 5 things on their list.
No, definitely. You're right. I mean, it solves so many problems, doesn't it? I suppose it's just about highlighting how it does, I suppose. Yeah. Right. Brilliant. All right. Well, just a couple of other little questions to finish up. Am I right in saying that you employ people through Subfield and
a small number? Yes, we're a new nonprofit, so we're not big, but we have 3 job postings right now. Yes, and of course, Sungage is always looking for people. So
fantastic. Well,
places are opportunities.
Nice. So for a lot of our readers and listeners, they will be very much at the beginning of their kind of career journey. They're looking for ways to get into this kind of space. So when you are looking to employ people, perhaps who are at the start of their career, what for you is the sort of most important thing that people can highlight? Is it attitude or experience or expertise or whatever?
Yeah, I think one of the pieces certainly for us at Undaunted, and certainly helps in all these areas, is to have a real deep passion connection to driving this transition forward, this kind of clean energy transition. We want people who are motivated by that mission. That means a lot, right? Because this work is not easy, and the compensation, will never be necessarily enough. So, I think having a deep connection to the mission is really important piece of it. And I think so finding ways to demonstrate that, whether it's, doing your research beforehand and reading a little bit about these problems, reflecting on how these problems or these solutions, where you've run into them in your own life. So I think some wrestling with the grand mission and some demonstration of that is always a good thing to look for. I think the other thing that we look for is, this was true at Sungage and it is true at Undaunted, is a nimbleness in temperament and spirit, that as startups and, working in a space I mean, this whole clean energy transition is about change, right? It's about doing things differently. It's about breaking the mold and being creative. So we need people who don't just want to keep kind of cranking the existing wheel. We want people who are going to question, right? Are going to be nimble and kind of like be willing to try something on Monday and a different thing on Tuesday, and have that kind of demonstrate some creativity, or like, I'm drawn to the creative process because all of this work fundamentally is about change, right? Mm-hmm. So if you are someone who wants to be doing this, wants to be told what's going to happen on Monday and get to do that same thing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and just keep chugging, if status quo or kind of routine is what you're looking for, we are fundamentally about disruption. Mm-hmm. And doing things differently. So I think those pieces, so like, connection to the mission, a nimbleness of spirit, and being drawn to the creative process. And this is like at all levels, right? Whether you are a junior person or whether you are a more senior person, we need that at all levels.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And for those who are sort of thinking about kind of taking the leap, perhaps like you starting their own organization, daunting as that is there sort of one kind of piece of advice that you could give, or sort of one top tip to sort of put out there for those who are thinking about it?
One top tip for starting your own thing, I think, thinking about your support network, like who are going to be, just like I talked about, kind of the rings of support for me in doing this work. It is hard work. I think, all of us face some amount of that imposter syndrome. I don't know anyone who doesn't. And so thinking about what your kind of rings of support are going to be, from the most intimate, in your home, to, moving out through all those professional spheres, and kind of how you can build those rings of support. I think that was really important for me. And I think having, and I guess I would put, so because you asked me for one, so I'm going to sneak it in, choosing your partner, finding a partner that is going to be on this roller coaster with you, on this journey with you, that is where you are in lockstep. Mm-hmm. About supporting each other on what will be a challenging and incredibly rewarding, but an incredibly challenging journey. I think having a partner to do this work, having a co-founder, is just really, really valuable. When you're up, they might be down, and you're going to help them. And, the hope is that when you're up and, when you're down, they're up, they can help kind of carry you through. So I think having a partner is incredibly important for startups.